Do you remember when Nvidia made the absolutely unprecedented move of unlaunching a graphics card before it actually launched? They had revealed it, they had talked about it, and then they got such massive pushback that they actually canceled the graphics card, or at least the name of the graphics card and a bit of the price point. This was the 12 gigabyte 4080, which never ended up seeing the light of day, at least under that naming scheme. Now, if you were not following the PC space at that time, or you've just forgotten, let's recap what happened. Because I think it's possible that Nvidia is trying to get away with it this time with the 5080 by learning the wrong lessons from their mistakes, or at least the wrong lessons from the consumer point of view, but maybe the right lessons from the marketing point of view if they're trying to get away with this again. Let's go ahead, like I said, though, and look more at what happened. So when the RTX 4080 was first announced, there was announced as two versions. There was a 16 gigabyte starting at $1,200 and a 12 gigabyte version starting at $900. Now, keep in mind that on this marketing slide, do you see any indication that the 12 gigabyte version has fewer CUDA cores or lower memory bandwidth, equaling significantly less performance? No? Well, when people eventually got the word that despite the only difference in the naming scheme being the VRAM capacity, and a lot of people are like, well, I game at 1440p and 12 gigabytes would be fine, when they actually find out that, wait, even if I'm within my 12 gigabyte VRAM buffer, I'm actually just getting significantly worse performance, there was that massive pushback. And that's what resulted in the unlaunching of the 12 gigabyte 4080. This is one of the only times, the only time I can think of, that Nvidia got such massive, overwhelming bad publicity and press and word of mouth for one of their marketing moves that they actually backed down. Now, again, it was the 12 gigabyte 4080 where that happened, but this card didn't disappear. They said it wasn't named right. So they did end up releasing this 12 gigabyte GPU with the same number of CUDA cores and memory bandwidth, although they did reduce the price point. Again, it was originally announced at $900. They ended up launching it under the name 4070 Ti, and they launched it at $800 instead of $900. Now, as you can see from the thumbnails when I search 4070 Ti review, you can see that this still wasn't received super well, even with the $100 price drop and the name change. And now Nvidia has since updated this again to the 4070 Ti Super once a year later when they released the Super series of cards, where now at the $800 price point, you get 16 gigabytes of VRAM and more performance. And that's maybe the card we should have had all along at that price point. But anyway, that's what happened. Now, okay, we've taken this little fun trip down memory lane, but remember my point is, did Nvidia learn the wrong lesson from this situation? Because we're getting into the leaks and rumors regarding the 5080 and the 5090. And I've already reported on these leaks and rumors, but not from this point of view, because it actually just started to click for me what might be going on. Now, I already mentioned that the rumored specs for the 5080 are completely unprecedented in terms of how cut down they are compared to the rumored flagship with the RTX 5090. Again, to recap those rumors, now again, this is still rumored, this is not officially announced, but the rumors are that the 5080 will have about half the CUDA cores of the 5090, which again is a ridiculous gap between the 80 series and the 90 series card, and also the memory bit bus going from 512 down to 256, again, is also massively reduced compared to the 90 class. In other words, if you think of what the 80 class represents in terms of performance in the lineup, you don't think of a card that is half the CUDA cores and memory bandwidth of the flagship. What kind of card would fit into half the CUDA cores? Well, Hardware Unboxed recently did a very interesting look at this, where they basically conclude that it's the the 70 class GPUs, where that fits in. I'm taking one of their slides. This is their CUDA core slide, but I'd highly recommend following this video. By the way, all my sources will be linked in the video description, so you can take a closer look. But again, in this hardware unboxed video, they're showing that the 70 class, well, it's different each generation, and was especially neutered in the 40 series. Generally, on average, if you take the 700 series, the 900 series, the 10 series, the 20 series, the 30 series, and the 40 series, and you average them, generally the 70 class GPU is offering 54% of the CUDA cores of the flagship, right? Now, the 40 series, we got a lot of the product stack kind of shifted down. But again, 54% is the average. So now we look at these specs, and the hardware unboxed video is making the argument, which I think is perfectly reasonable, that this 5080 feels more like a 5070 if these rumored specs end up being true. But now let's think about what I'm doing, going here, talking back about the unlaunching of the 12 gigabyte 4080. Guys, if we think about the 12 gigabyte 4080, that is basically the equivalent of this, right? We had a card coming with more like 70 tier CUDA cores relative to the flagship. And we had a card with, half the VRAM of the flagship, the cut down memory bus, right? We had a card that was basically a 70 class card masquerading as an 80 class card. And it got that massive pushback. But I think it got that pushback especially because you saw the real 80 class card, right? We had the actual 4080 and then the fake 4080. And then again, they renamed it and relaunched it, okay? Right? So what is the Nvidia marketing lesson out of this? Well, they don't want to have another disaster where they have to unlaunch a product. So, but they probably still want to get away with it, right? So their message wasn't, oh, wow, we shouldn't do that to consumers. Again, if these rumors are true, it feels a lot like their thought process is, how do we get away with it? So how do we get away with it? Well, we launch one model of the 5080, and it's the super cut down version, because then maybe they can get away with pricing it where they want, and with no other 80 class card to compare it against at launch, it then doesn't get that massive pushback ahead of time, leading to the unlaunching that they had last time. Now, also with the 50 series, if the rumors are true, and this is really kind of out of rumor territory in the sense that like even AMD vice president of their gaming division, Jack Huynh, has mentioned that they're really not focused on the high end for RDNA 4. It's looking like Nvidia could be standing alone at the high end, meaning this 5080, despite being this cut down, could be more powerful than anything AMD can offer. And so without that competition from, outside, competing companies, and then not launching a different model of the 80 class card to highlight that difference, I think that's how Nvidia marketing might be planning on getting away with this. So if this 5080 comes out at, $900, $1,000, notice, remember, the 4080 12 gigabyte, they wanted to slot it in at that $900 price point, which if you just think of an 80 class card coming in at $900, well, considering the 4080 we actually ended up with came in at $1,200, that was poorly received, and then they brought it down to $1,000 when they kind of rebranded it as the 4080 Super. The 80 class was just a disaster in the 40 series, guys. Anyway, maybe they're feeling like, okay, let's launch this one. Maybe this one will be at that, $999 launch price. And they're expecting people to be excited because it's not $1,200 like the 4080 was at launch. And you don't have that comparison point of the better 4080. Even if this card, spec-wise, might make more sense to be called a 4070. So that's where I'm going with this. And I have one more piece of evidence, again, still in the leaker rumor space, that this might actually be their overall scheme. Because There's also a strong rumor that there's going to eventually be a better 5080. It just won't happen at launch. So it's heavily rumored that there could be a 24 gigabyte 5080 following later after we get the 16 gigabyte version. Now, the leak is that they could do that on the same memory bus if they used a 3 gigabyte module instead of a 2 gigabyte module for the GDDR7 to slot into those same spaces, and that gets you that 50% VRAM buff. Now, the other possibility, because it's not really specified in these leaks, is that the 24 gigabyte version could end up being more of like a super version, where it ends up being a cut down 5090 that also has more CUDA cores and memory bandwidth than the 16 gigabyte 5080. In other words, there's already rumors that there's going to be a graphics card that will be more of a split between the 5090 and the 5080 that they're rumoring here, with at least more VRAM and potentially more performance. And if they do that, again, after launch, we end up back in this situation, which is what Nvidia wanted to get away with the 40 series, right? Where you have an extremely expensive actual 80 class card, and then a 70 class card masquerading as an 80 class card with almost an 80 class price. They're just thinking that they can get there this time around by only releasing the bad one first, and then slotting another one into that gap later. Again, though, this is all based entirely on leaks and rumors, not any official NVIDIA decisions. But hey, if anybody from NVIDIA is listening to this, video speculating this, and this is something that they're thinking about behind the scenes, I would just say, caution. You guys did end up with massive pushback and having to unlaunch your 12 gigabyte 4080. So, I'm hoping that the consumers can see through this, even if it's more heavily disguised. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Am I way off base with all of this? And if you want to support what I do here on the channel, consider hitting the join button down below to become a channel member. You can check out the little bonuses that are available too if you do that as a thank you. But I totally understand that doesn't fit into everybody's budget. So huge thank you to viewers, commenters, subscribers. You're all beautiful people, and I hope you have an excellent day.